Hello, I will be presenting our Capstone Engagement Assessment Analysis and Hardening of a Vulnerable System. This presentation is brought to you by Bendita Lima, Carlito Martin, and myself, Dennis Mejia. First, we will break down the table of contents. This document contains the following sections. Our first section, Network Topology. Our second section, the Red Team Security Assessment. Our third section, Blue Team Log Analysis and Attack Characterization. And finally, our fourth section, Hardening, Proposed Alarms, and Mitigation Strategies. First, we will go over our network topology. As you can see here, we will start with our attacker VM at the IP of 192.168.1.90, a Kali Linux-based VM. We will use this to connect through port 80 all the way to our target server, which is an Apache/Ubuntu virtual machine sitting at the IP of 192.168.1.105, which is also connected to our Elk server, a Ubuntu-based VM. This right here, both machines will make up our virtual network with the IP of 192.168.1.0-24. Next, we have our Red Team Security Assessment. First, we will do our recon describing the target. We run nmap to identify the following hosts on the network. The first host is our server 1 with the IP of 192.168.1.105. The role on the network is the web server. Next, we have our vulnerability assessment. The assessment uncovered the following critical vulnerabilities in the target. Our first vulnerability was the open port 80. Description: port 80 is the default HTTP service port. The impact it had in this target was when port 80 is left open, attackers were able to gain access to network and user sensitive information. Next, we have our weak authentication. The description on this is: authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a person or device. The impact it had here was it allowed malicious actors to use a compromised user account to access the webdav directory. And third, we have a remote command execution. Description: remote command execution refers to the ability of a user or attacker to make privilege or configuration changes to a system. And the impact it had was, upon execution of the reverse shell, attackers can gain access to the root directory and obtain files and sensitive information. Next, we have our exploitation. First, open port 80. Tools and process. So the red team utilized nmap to identify open port 80 on the target server. Upon entering the target server's IP address into a web browser, the red team gained access to the server's file directory. Second, the achievements. The red team was able to extract sensitive information from the target server. Specifically, they were able to locate and access a hidden directory at the path company_folders-secret_folders. And third, here we have our screenshots. The red team here utilized nmap to identify the open port, and then followed by the red team entering the target server's IP address into the web server, and then the red team gained access to the server's file directory, which brought up an authentication required window asking for Ashton's credentials. Next, we have our weak authentication vulnerability. First, the tools and process. After locating and accessing the hidden directory, secret folder, the red team learned that Ashton was likely a valid username. So what they did was they utilized Hydra and then were able to use a brute force attack to obtain login credentials. Next, we have their achievements. So they discovered the username Ashton and the user's password Leopoldo, made use of the credentials to access the secret folder. So within the secret folder, they were able to obtain this subsequently led to the discovery of user Ryan's password via CrackStation. Ultimately, the red team was able to access the webdav through the compromised account. And third, here we have our screenshots of the brute force attack and the utilization of CrackStation. And our third vulnerability, remote command execution. Once the red team gained access to the webdav, they used MS Venom to upload a PHP reverse shell payload. Following the previous step, the red team then utilized MF console to establish a listener. Next, the red team placed a reverse shell into the webdav directory. Achievements. The red team were able to obtain access to the WebDAV via user Ryan's credentials, as you can see here. And finally, the red team were able to gain access to the root directory and secure the flag objective. And now we will be discussing the blue team's log analysis and attack characterization. First, analysis, identifying the port scan. The port scan occurred at 1:50 p.m. 1:50 p.m. 10,032 packets were sent, and from which IP 192.168.1.90. The spike in the connections over time, as well as a spike in the errors versus successful transactions, indicate that this is a port scan. Next, we'll discuss our findings for the request for the hidden directory. There were a total of 6,987 requests made. We can see in the same panel that the file connect_to_corp_server was requested 3 times. Next, we will discuss our uncovering of the brute force attack. We can see that this folder was requested 6,987 times. The file inside that directory was only requested 3 times, so out of the 6,209 requests, only 3 were successful. And finally, we'll be discussing our WebDAV connection. There were a total of 28 requests made to this directory. We can see that the password.dav file was requested, as well as a file named shell.php. Next, we will discuss our blue team proposed alarms and mitigation strategies. Our first mitigation is blocking the port scan. What kind of alarm can be set to detect future port scans? First, you can use TCP port scan alerts. You can configure scan and sweep features to prevent future scans. What thresholds would you set to activate this alarm? Threshold values can be configured through the security profiles and filters. The filter is enabled when the number of IP addresses passing through breaks the limit set on the threshold. Next, system hardening. What configurations can be set on the host to mitigate port scans? You can enable configurations by activating a filter like 7000, 7002, and 7004. Solutions: 7000 is for TCP, 7002 is TCP host sweep, and 7004 is ICMP host sweep. Our next mitigation is finding the request for the hidden directory. What kind of alarm can be set to detect the future unauthorized access? Alerts can be configured to notify the user of future detection of unauthorized access, specifically these hidden directories. What threshold would you set to activate this alarm? This threshold would be set to alert whenever any IP is trying to access this data. System hardening. What configuration can be set on the host to block unwanted access? Blocking port 445 will not allow anyone to copy data or file system from that path. Describe a solution, if possible, provide required command lines. So first, what you would do is open your command line and then run it as an administrator. Next, you would put in this command here, net add firewall, set all profile state on, and press enter. Next, you would input this command here, net add firewall add rule dir $in action block, followed by protocol TCP local port 445 name quotation block underscore TCP -445 quotation mark, and press enter. And that will block the port 445. Our next mitigation is preventing brute force attacks. What kind of alarm can be set to detect future brute force attacks? Alert that notifies if port 401 is being accessed from any suspicious outside servers. What threshold would you set to activate this alarm? A threshold of 10 is default but can be raised to more. System hardening. What configuration can be set on the host to block brute force attacks? Limiting the failed login attempts so that account will be now locked. Also using MFA multi-factor authentication. Describe the solution, if possible, provide the required command lines. So for our login, failed login attempts, access we would access and configure the account lockout threshold. And then we would use another source of verification to decrease the chances of access for multi-factor authentication. In our next mitigation strategy, detecting the WebDAV connection. What alarm can be set to detect future access to this directory? Alerts can be configured to notify when suspicious activity is occurring from an outside machine. What threshold would you set to activate this alarm? Any IP other than the ones that are whitelisted will trigger this alert. System hardening. What configuration can be set on the host to control access? While using a firewall, you can set a rule to restrict access from any traffic coming from the internet. Describe the solution. If possible, provide the required command lines. And our solutions would be to block port 80 and 443. And our next mitigation strategy, identifying reverse shell uploads. What kind of alarm can be set to detect future file uploads? Alerts can be configured to notify any movement coming from port 4444. What threshold would you set to activate this alarm? In this case, we would configure the alert to any traffic coming through. System hardening. What configuration can be set on the host to block file uploads? You can configure your firewall rules and set it to block UDP port 4444. Describe the solution. If possible, provide the required command line. So in a Ubuntu virtual machine, you would use sudo ufw deny 4444-UDP. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.